Okay, good afternoon, everybody. My name's Abby Stamp. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the executive director of Measure 110. And I'll be assisting Leticia, your tri-chair today, with facilitation for today's meeting. The Oversight and Accountability Council welcomes and encourages community input. Members of the public are invited to submit public comments or get on our interested parties email list by emailing oha.measure110@oha.oregon.gov. That email address and more information about the council can be found on the Measure 110 OAC website. OAC members have asked that OHA and other staff who are present in the meeting space introduce themselves in the chat. Please share your role with the agency and if you are a subject matter expert, your area of expertise. I'll now turn it over to Leticia for opening remarks.
Hey, thank you, Abby. So today, I wanted to first announce our agenda. So we will be starting in executive session, followed by appeals, delegation presentation, discussion, and a vote, and then OHA updates. And I will pass it over to Carly for attendance.
Hey, everyone. Okay. Ami?
I'm here.
Hi, sorry about the confusion with all the links today, everyone. Amy? I got you, Amy. Caroline?
Here.
Hi, Caroline. Dharma? I know she's trying to get in. I'll come back to her. Hubert?
I'm here.
Hey, Hubert.
Hello.
Hunter?
Here.
Hey, Hunter. Jackie? Josh? Did you get kicked off? Looks like it. Keisha?
Here.
Hey, Keisha. Leticia?
Here.
Linda? Mason? Melissa? Morgan? Morgan, you can put
Here, sorry.
Thank you. Ryan?
Here.
Hey, Ryan. Sabrina?
Here.
Zeb?
Here.
Sam is going to be a little late. Annalise?
Here.
Hi, Annalise. Let me check this real quick. Sorry, give me a minute. All right, we have quorum at 13.
Thank you, Carly. Did you see Dharma's message in the chat?
Just got her. Thank you.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Carly. So the Oversight and Accountability Council will now meet in executive session pursuant to ORS 192.660 2F and H to consider attorney-client privileged advice. Representatives of the news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on or otherwise disclose anything said about these subjects during the executive session, except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. No decision may be made in executive session. At the end of the executive session, we will return to the webinar. And just an announcement to the public, you will need to rejoin this meeting after executive session. Okay, see you all in executive session. Okay. Welcome back from executive session. I would like to make an announcement. The council will be taking another look at Multnomah County again. We will need to reopen Multnomah County because a previously funded applicant was not addressed.
Hey, Carly, you should take attendance again.
Okay.
Just making sure.
Did everyone get a chance? Looks like everyone's back. On me.
Here.
Glad you made it back. Amy? Amy, I know you're busy. You can put it in the chat too. Caroline?
Here.
Welcome back. Dharma?
Here.
Hey, Dharma. Hubert? I don't see him. Hunter?
Here.
Welcome back. Josh? Keisha?
Yeah.
Leticia?
Here.
Mason? Melissa? Morgan?
Here.
Ryan?
Here.
Sabrina?
Here.
Zeb?
I'm here.
Sam is not here yet. Annalise?
Here.
You? And we have quorum at 12.
Melissa's here.
Oh, hi, Melissa.
Hi.
I have got you marked down. Quorum at 13.
Jackie's here.
And now 14. Hi, Jackie.
Hey.
Back to you, Leticia.
Thank you, Carly. And I will just make the announcement again in case anybody was transitioning from executive session to this session. So the council will be taking another look at Multnomah County. We will need to reopen Multnomah County because a previously funded applicant was not addressed. Okay, I don't see any hands up. All right, so we will move on to our next agenda item. I will pass it on to Abby for appeals, delegation, presentation, and discussion.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Good to see you all again. So I'm going to take just a few minutes and thank you, Carly, for sharing the slide deck to go over the process through which you all need to decide how you want to handle denials and appeals. And so I've got some background to go over for you. So Drug Treatment Recovery Services Fund appeals. Next slide, please. So for background, Oregon revised statutes and the rule indicate an applicant that was notified that they were not funded by the Oversight and Accountability Council, there are 95 of those, can submit a written request to the council or the council's designee within 5 business days after receiving the notice described in OAR 944-020-0020 sub 2. And the council must consider appeals at their next scheduled meeting and must vote to approve or deny the request for an appeal and must notify the applicant in writing of the decision to approve or deny the requested appeal within 10 business days of its decision. The council can, in its discretion, delegate decision-making authority on an appeal to a subcommittee or to the authority, meaning the Oregon Health Authority. The decision by the council or their designee must be final. Next slide. So the question at hand is about this sentence. Sorry, two sentences. The council can, in its discretion, delegate decision-making authority on an appeal to a subcommittee or to the authority. The decision by the council or the designee must be final. So here's a bit more background for you. We are not sending out denial letters all at once because, as you just heard from the required process, it would be absolutely impractical, to be actually probably impossible, to manage all 95 denials and whatever appeals are generated from those denial letters, all in the same cadence. So Kathy Cervantes has been incredibly helpful in identifying a reasonable way for us to move forward in a thoughtful cadence to both be communicative with applicants and ensure adherence to the rules, and make sure that you all are able to hear the information you need to make those final appeal decisions. So this is a bit of a chart showing the time. So you'll see we are here. Today is somehow amazingly February 26th. And on Monday, 18 denial letters were sent, all of the denied applicants for Benton and Clackamas counties. And so what we will be doing is sending those letters out in batches so that we are able to just continue to communicate with applicants and make sure the information comes back to you, right? And so to do all that in a thoughtful way. And you'll see the 5-day window to appeal, and the appeal deadline, which is AD, and then any additional OAC meetings as needed. All of this is to make sure that we're still able to meet the timeline required by the Office of Procurement, OCMP, Office of Contracts and Procurement, to make sure that all grant agreements are executed in time for providers to begin their years of service on July 1st. Any questions about this timeline? Next slide. So in order to achieve this, here are a couple of potential motions that the tri-chairs discussed, I believe. So here are, anyway, I'll just read them. The proposed motion 1 is that the OAC would move to delegate decision-making authority on the appeals to the Measure 110 Executive Director appointed under ORS 430.388. That is me currently. Or 2, that the OAC would move to form and delegate decision-making authority to a subcommittee. I think that's the last slide, Carly, is that right? Yeah. Any discussion or questions or particularly comments from your tri-chairs as you move into this conversation and decide how to move forward with a delegation for the appeal process? Hunter?
I think before I would be comfortable either making a motion or even voting on a motion, I would want to hear from more senior members of the OAC, in particular, those who were here for the very first round of funding, and see what their thoughts are on this. So I guess it's kind of a request from senior members of the OAC to weigh in on this.
Hunter? Oh, I'm sorry, Zeb?
Yeah. And so how many appeals are there? I mean, how many organizations got denied on this initial process?
95.
95. So that's quite the task. My opinion is that it's quite the task to take on ourselves as the OAC, as if we just went through the process of reviewing all these counties, going through it with a fine-tooth comb, and then for ourselves to take on that task seems to be like a monumental ask. I would like to explore these two options for sure to see, because I think that would work out the best, in my opinion. So I'll add some more later, but
Dharma?
Yeah, I think to your question, Hunter, I don't know if they had the same kind of appeal process in the past. So this is new. I also think that it feels really impractical to do it in the full committee. And I would think that delegating it to a smaller group of folks in a subcommittee would be the best way to incorporate the council into that process. I think that when we discussed it was maybe the tri-chairs, or small subcommittee tri-chairs plus some other folks, but like doing it in the big group is going to be not tenable.
Nisha.
Yeah, I would just wonder what this process entails. Like what's going on in the appeals process, um, and what decisions would need to be made or unmade. I would want to know the whole process before even making a choice or decision.
Thanks, Keisha. Let me make sure I heard you right. Your mic was a little bit muffled. You want to have a better understanding of the full process before having an opinion or voting. Is that right?
Yeah, I would want to know, step by step what would be the process for folks.
Yeah, great. Shannon, do you mind answering?
Sure. So, right, everyone's going to get a denial letter. They have to sort of state in their appeal, if they appeal in a timely manner, why they think they should have been funded and weren't. If there's a denial of the appeal, right, then that's sort of the end of it from your perspective. If the OAC or the subcommittee or OHA, if authority is delegated, or to grant an appeal, then it should come back to the OAC for a decision about what to do, right? So granting an appeal does not mean that an applicant then gets funded. It means that the OAC has to sort of figure out what to do with that applicant, and make perhaps a different decision in the county for which the applicant was funded. I hope that helps.
Keisha, does that answer your question? Do you have other questions before I call on Kathy?
Because it says it has to come back to the OAC for any further. I guess I'm a little confused. So it would be on, like, if we delegated authority to OHA, it would be on one person to make the decision if it should come back to the OAC or,
Right,
yeah.
right.
But the ultimate decision still has to come from the OAC.
The Keisha, it's Shannon O'Fallon from DOJ. The ultimate funding decision has to be made by the OAC. So if an appeal is granted and the funding decision is being revisited, then that goes to the OAC. But the OAC can delegate sort of the final authority to make a decision on the appeal to a subcommittee or to OHA. So again, if it were to OHA or the subcommittee and the subcommittee decides, no, we don't think that there's any merit to this appeal, then that would be the end of it. If the subcommittee or OHA were to say, yeah, we think this appeal has merit, then it would go back to the OAC again to revisit the funding decision that was made that resulted in this applicant being denied.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Sabrina?
Yes, I have three different questions. Abby, is it okay if I go one at a time?
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to know what other agenda business does the OAC have from here, in the foreseeable future that might make us doing the appeal process a heavy lift? Like, do we have other things like say a couple months ago, we knew we were going to be going through votes. We knew we were going to be doing this. Is there anything like heavy lifting in the foreseeable future for the OAC as far as work and stuff we have to take into consideration outside of the appeal process?
That's a good question, Sabrina. I would need to check in with the grant administrators to recall what potential situations might need your audience and decision in terms of the existing grantees. But no, I mean, there are no 4-hour marathon meetings together to make big decisions because the bulk of your work is complete. in terms of that decision making.
Okay, thank you. And then my another one of my questions is, when we do the appeal process, do we start from scratch, like we're looking at it with fresh eyes, or do we look at it and take into consideration, hey, this is why they didn't get funded, and then they're able to submit different documentation that might sway or change our vote to actually funding them?
Shannon's shaking her head. Go ahead, Shannon.
Yeah, Sabrina, they're not supposed to submit any additional information in the I don't know if you were to, again, grant an appeal because you thought that it had merit. I don't necessarily think that means that you go back to the very beginning and the application gets rescored and all of that, right? But it's going to necessitate revisiting probably the overall county funding decision.
Okay, thank you, Shannon. And I don't know what the difference between Abby doing it as the executive person and or the council doing it as far as heavy lifting. It sounds like it would be a heavy lift either way. So I'm in favor of my consensus would be for the council to do it and or a subcommittee, because it's going to have to end up back at the council anyway, as far as what I'm hearing you guys say. And so that's what I'm in favor of.
Morgan.
So what I'm hearing essentially is step one is, do we grant them the right to appeal or not? So that's like approval or denial, which is the right to appeal. And if we approve the right to appeal, then their appeal gets looked at holistically in the context of the county and perhaps reevaluating the funding decision. So that's just like the first administrative step is.
Morgan, can I just, I mean, under the rule, they do have a right to appeal.
Okay.
So I just want to make that clear. So you're not granting the right to appeal, but if you approved an appeal, right, then what you're doing is you're revisiting that initial funding decision that denied them.
Okay, and whether it's the executive director or a subcommittee that approves the appeal, then that goes to the full OAC or
It's a decision on the appeal. So it's either, the way that the rule is written, it's either an approval or denial of the appeal. So if it's denied, again, if the decision is, we don't think there's any merit to the appeal, the applicant, for example, isn't saying anything that we didn't consider, right? They weren't unfairly left out of the process. Then the appeal would be denied, and that's the end of it. That's a final decision. So it is only if whoever is making the decision thinks that there's merit to the appeal that it would have to go back to the OAC to revisit the funding decision.
Okay, thank you.
Did you have more questions, Morgan?
No, that's all. I would just, between a subcommittee and delegating that to OHA, I would be comfortable with either one. All of us have had many heavy lifts recently, and we were quite thorough with our evaluations. So, I mean, I would be fine delegating that process to OHA.
Ryan, you next. Sorry, Ryan, did you not hear me call on you? Ryan Blair, you're next. There he is.
I didn't hear who you said. So I just want to be clear that the current approved organizations represent all the money.
Pretty much. Like y'all budgeted down very, very close to the penny.
And the OHA is still going to be responsible for negotiations and contracting. So there may be some small changes in the funding model, but so any approved appeal would reopen then that county for additional funding discussion.
Shannon?
Probably, right, given the caps, probably. I mean, maybe there's a situation, right, where there's a wiggle room and the applicant, wasn't asking for that much money. I mean, maybe that's a scenario where you wouldn't have to revisit everybody else and could just do an added. But the other thing you have to remember, right, with appeals is you still have to come at an appeal being consistent with how you've made decisions in the past. And not treat, somebody that appealed sort of differently than everybody else was treated the first time around.
Okay. And so it can't be, you weren't selected because there's no money, not because your request was outside of our criteria.
Was that a question? I
Yeah,
wasn't sure that was a
I
question.
might be. I'll be done and rethink that if I need to and put my hand up again. Thanks.
So I have two questions. The one is about the language of the decision must be final. If they, if we delegate it over to subcommittee, whoever, and they say, yes, there's merit to this appeal, let's have the discussion again. Does that mean we have to fund that partner, or because like the finality of it, that's what I'm confused about. Because if that's a final decision by whoever we delegate it to, does that mean we have to fund them if they say there's merit to the appeal?
Yeah, Dharma, it's Shannon. No, I don't think so. So you actually could have a scenario where you decided that there was merit to the appeal, and so you revisited it, but you made the same decision to not fund them. In which
Uh-huh.
case they would get another right to appeal, which, is sort of awkward. But
Yeah.
at the point where you can't, I mean, it's unlikely that someone would. I mean, I don't want to get into
Sure.
this. I don't want to get into sort of too much about administrative law, but there's sort of reasons why the rule uses the
Okay.
final decision
Okay.
language.
I just wanted to make sure on that like that we would be able to, if we as a council decided like, oh, it's not in line to fund it, if that was something we're stuck with. So to that end, I worry about the time lane that is laid out in the rule, y'all, in that like we have to respond to it in so much time. And if there was a robust discussion about something and we couldn't come to consensus, we would have to make that decision by that next meeting, right? And so that's where I would really err on a subcommittee or delegation OHA to make the decision, because I think we already had a really refined discussion about this, and that I stand by our decisions. And so I think that we should avoid the big group, because we'd have to make that decision then, or we could be stuck in that meeting and need to make that decision. So I think it's just a time thing with with the constraints of the time on of the days that we need to have the decision made on the rule. So does that make sense?
Thank you, Dharma. Sabrina.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. So if we take a look at somebody's appeal and they already have a right to it, but we decide to look at it, I'm not sure the language you used earlier, so I don't want to try to repeat that. But if we do take a look at somebody else's appeal, we can stick by our original decision-making process if we wanted to as a council. We don't have to, I think I heard you say, reopen it just because we granted them the chance to look at it. Is that what you said, kind of like that?
Yeah, Sabrina, it's Shannon O'Fallon from DOJ. You're not just because you grant an appeal doesn't mean you have to fund the organization.
Caroline.
I think we need to be very careful here, folks. So you guys are asking about the people who've been here from the beginning. There's an appeal process for a reason. It's because someone really feels like they have a good case, and we owe them to listen. And we can't be jumping to conclusions and saying, does that mean we're gonna have to start all over? Yeah, we might have to with some, if they had a legitimate appeal and we agreed that was legitimate, in all fairness, we have to look at that appeal and make that decision. We don't know what the appeal is, so we can't base anything on like concluding already when they have a right to appeal. And so I think we need to be very careful in that it's fairness. Now, I know there wasn't enough money out there. I mean, if I had a magic wand and had $1 billion, I would put it in Measure 110 and I would fund every application because I think every application, well, maybe some of them might not have, but I think the majority of the application was really a need that they wanted for their agency. And so I think we need to be careful and be very careful with our words because there's a lot of hurt feelings out there already. The fact that some folks are not going to get funded. So I think we need to be open when someone says there's an appeal and we really need to look at it to see in case of fairness that we listen. And if we say, yes, they have a good appeal, but there's no money, that's a whole different ballgame. But we need to listen to the appeal to see the reason why they're submitting that.
Thank you, Caroline. Morgan. You're on mute.
It sounds like a lot of us are in agreement that we need to look at this appeals process, but delegating it to a smaller group would be ideal. So since the OAC retains the decision on whether or not to fund or not, if the appeal is granted an open get followed or whatever sort of criteria for OHA to determine whether or not it has merit, and then it comes to the OAC or the subcommittee evaluation route. Where are people leaning? Considering that timeline is really intense.
Hunter.
So taking all of the information that I've got so far in, what I'm thinking, and I think possibly Dharma said it, and I know this is semi-asking and or volunteering a couple members of the OAC for something that I don't think I would have the time for to be on a subcommittee. So I want to say that first. I think the tri-chairs as a ground level for a subcommittee, and then what OAC members feel that they have the time to commit to this, because I don't know what a timeline would look like that, but there are 95 possible appeals here, and so that will be a time-consuming process. You'll be taken away from your 9 to 5 and possibly your family to review these appeals. With the newborn, I can't do it, but if the OACs have that time, and I know Zeb's been away from his family a lot already, but I trust our three tri-chairs' opinions to hold on to our OAC priorities that we voted on. And also, that would be an opportunity for any other council members who do have the time to commit to that process to say so, right? And so that's my idea. That's where I'm falling on this, is tri-chairs and whoever has the time to do this. And all of us with the understanding that we, like Morgan said, we've got a timeline here and we need to hurry. So like, if you really have the time, please say so, but I myself do not. That's an idea.
Thank you, Hunter. Annalise.
So I just want to raise one concern in response to Morgan's comments about giving OHA or the smaller group direction. I mean, in the rules, it does say that no additional information can be offered in the appeal, and it has to be a concise statement explaining why the applicant believes they meet minimum application criteria or should have received a higher evaluation score. So it's a pretty technical review for that first pass at whether then it comes to the OAC the way I'm hearing this. So I would just really caution this group to not start putting additional parameters around it, because you did make really hard decisions. And if you had enough money, you would have made different decisions. That's not what the appeals process is about. So I would just offer that caution.
Keisha,
I'll let Dharma go and then come back to me.
I was gonna agree with Annalise, just ask a question about the process for the subcommittee, if that would be taking place instead of our OAC meetings, or if the OAC meetings would still be happening.
I'll let Shannon chime in if I'm off track here, but I would imagine the subcommittee would need to meet probably a couple, maybe more times per week, and that it's still clear that the final,
Yeah.
arbiter, right, is this group. And so those
Mhm.
OAC meetings still need to happen. So this is on top of your regular meetings, your regular meetings.
Gotcha.
Okay, Keisha.
Yeah, I would when if it was a subcommittee created, I would move beyond just the tri-chairs because there's not enough diversity in the tri-chair pool for me. So I would extend that and make sure it's a real diverse voice.
Sabrina.
I'll make myself available to be involved in the subcommittee.
Dharma.
I just have a question about quorum on subcommittees and what structure we're putting forward on the subcommittee to make sure that it's feasible for us so that we're not getting stuck on a quorum or something like that. So I just want to make sure, like, what would our quorum be on the subcommittee to make those decisions? Does it need to be something specific that's already like laid out? I'm just wondering that piece.
Yeah, this is Shannon from DOJ. The subcommittee should have specified numbers so we can figure out what that quorum is. And the subcommittee will need to meet in a public meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna be honest. For me, I mean, kind of on what Annalise was saying about the very specifics of the process of the appeal and the parameters. To me, this could be done by OHA. And I know it says Abby, but Abby, I assume it wouldn't just be you, right? It'd be you and your team, I would gather.
Probably in some shape or form, yes.
Yeah. Um, that's the way I would go. Now, I'm just one person, but because of the specific parameters of the appeal process, that's how I would lean. But
Morgan.
Yeah, I'm with Zeb on that, especially hearing Annalise say that those criteria are so sort of simple and rather clear, like very binary, yes, no, did it meet this? There's not a huge level for like, different interpretation in that. So I would be very comfortable delegating that to OHA. And I just thinking about having to have that subcommittee meet multiple times a week on top of the OAC meetings on that timeline. And if anything got held up because they weren't meeting quorum or people's, lives and jobs were getting in the way of them being able to attend all of those meetings, I would just hate for that to delay our process. And so I'm with Zeb, probably just delegating that to.
Jackie Mercer.
Oh, hi, everybody. I agree with Seb that, I think that when it gets into the finer details of how this goes, that really no place is more prepared for looking at that level of detail and making those decisions than OHA. I think it would be an awful lot for OAC members to take that on, and if the state can do that'd be great. I'm sure that they would probably be talking a lot with Miss Shannon. It's just my thought.
Keisha.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just kind of in line with what Carolyn was talking about. Like, it is our duty as the OAC to make sure that we are listening to these folks and doing them due diligence. And even if it is a simple 2-question process, just bring it to the council. They didn't answer this question, or they didn't answer this, and so we suggest this, and then we move forward. But just let them be heard. I mean, that's what anybody ever wants, is to be heard. And so I'm kind of on the lines with Carolyn, and we can hear them out. It doesn't have to be long and drawn out, but we can hear them.
Dharma.
I have a question on process too. If OHA is delegated if we delegate to OHA, does that happen in a public meeting as well? Or is it only if the council's involved that requires the public meeting component of it, is what I'm wondering.
Dharma, it's Shannon. If the delegation is to a single OHA individual, then the public meetings law would not apply.
I see. So if we delegate to OHA, do we have to specify if it's one person versus a group of people?
That would be best.
Got
And I think
you.
did the slides show the motions? Yeah, I think it was to Abby.
It was Abby, sorry. I see. How do you feel about it, Abby? I guess, do you feel like do you feel like it's something that's the best for our timeline?
This really, again, Dharma, I'm really in service to you all. And my job is to make sure that behavioral health resource networks continue to be funded and built and become sturdy networks in every county, and you all make these decisions to make it happen. So if y'all want me to do it, I'll do it. And if y'all want to do it in partnership, I'll be there at all of your subcommittee meetings and make sure that you have the information you need to make those decisions. Ryan had his hand up for a hot minute. I don't know if Ryan has something else to add, but Dharma's up while Ryan thinks about it. Go ahead, Dharma.
I was just going to move to delegate decision-making authority on appeals to the Measure 110 executive director appointed under OS 43388, currently Abby Stamp.
Second.
Dharma moves to delegate to Abby Stamp under option 1, and Morgan seconds their discussion. Keisha?
I mean, though I don't know. I just think we're doing a disservice as the OAC to delegate again authority to OHA. Not personally you, Abby, but just we're doing a disservice to delegate our power to Oregon Health Authority again.
Dharma.
Because it's such a technical question though, on whether or not the appeal has merit, that I don't think that there's a huge risk in losing our voice here. In that I think that we spend a lot of time making a refined decision, and I feel that the technicality of if that appeal has merit or not, if it does have merit, we'll still hear it in the council. We'll still be able to dole it all out here. But if it's not, if the appeal doesn't have merit, which I do have confidence in Abby to make that determination, then I don't think that we're losing any voice.
Caroline.
I think we need to open up the door to see if there's anyone else on the committee who would like to be with Abby. Sabrina already said she would volunteer. I didn't hear from the rest of the folks to see if there was other people who's willing to work with Abby. So is there anyone else?
I would.
So that was Keisha, I believe, who chimed in. Shannon's coming off mute and Hunter's hand is up next. Shannon, do you need to interject?
Yeah, just like raising again the public meeting issue again, right? Because if I mean, the motion on the floor is about delegating to the executive director. And so there probably should be a vote on that. But I think, if you start adding in Abby plus council members, then we have public meetings issues. Not that that's a problem, but just for awareness.
Hunter.
My question is to Annalise. Annalise, would you read that rule that you read before again? Because I think that highlighted something that I didn't know about the appeal process, which is it comes down to a kind of a minute couple of little qualifications to where if the appeal has merit. And then also my second piece was going to be to Keisha's point from earlier that if we were going to have a subcommittee, who would be willing to do that, so we get a diverse subcommittee. But even before then, I'd like to hear that rule again, because after hearing that, it had me changing my stance on this.
So I want to defer to Shannon. I think I was just trying to get at the fact that there's no new information. Shannon, it sounds like you guys already have something drafted for the instructions.
Right. So the appeal instructions are going to announce that the OAC made a decision not to fund that, telling them how many days they have to appeal. They're supposed to submit, and maybe Kathy, check me if I'm wrong here because I'm going on memory, right? That they're supposed to include their application and application materials, and they're supposed to provide a concise statement about why they think they should have been funded.
You're correct. They're to have a concise no more than 2 pages of why they feel that it should be appealed. So they have. I know it's very confusing, but one of the things that Annalise said in there was talking about there's 3 steps to the appeal. One was the application itself not being qualified. The next one was not meeting the minimum score, which everyone met the minimum score. So that
right. So
I'm getting there. And then round 3 is on the funding. And in that funding, they're to submit a 2-page document and only the materials that they submitted for their application. They cannot submit additional material at that time. Thank you.
Let's go back to Keisha.
You can come back to me, sorry.
Okay. Caroline, your hand is up.
So I'm not sure if folks are paying attention to what's happening statewide and the distrust already in terms of this whole process. I think for us to give it over, I mean, I would love to just give it to Abby, but I don't think it's going to be in our best interests because of the fact that if we're not transparent and we're not open, I understand we don't want to have public meetings. I don't think that should be a good rationale as to the reason why we don't add people who said they're willing to be on the subcommittee. I think we need to be very open and transparent. And if we're not, say bye to to the council. I mean, I'm serious. There's already, I think, some disgruntled people, and they have reasons. And I don't want, just because we're on this council, to say that we have all the answers, because we don't. But I think if we're not transparent, it's going to haunt us. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Morgan.
I feel confident that Abby will fairly judge the applicants, and if they do have merit, we will talk about them extensively in a public meeting and look to reevaluate those decisions. But this first step is rather administrative, which is, I mean, there's a motion on the floor right now because of that, because it's just quite simple in allowing Abby to do the grunt administrative work of going through that and then presenting us with the cases that do have merit so that we can discuss them in full council.
Keisha, back to you.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm a little confused about the whole process, period, at this point now. But if it does have merit, it would come to the OAC, but if it, because it's no public law, it would just go away. I'm asking a question, I guess.
Right, Keisha. There would be no other decision that would come back to the OAC. That isn't to say that Abby or whoever was delegated authority wouldn't come back to the OAC and provide information about the status of decisions on appeals, presumably.
Yeah, so for me, I'm still with being transparent, kind of like Carolyn said, and letting people know that we heard them. It wasn't a decision on one person that we as the OAC council heard, and it could still be denied, but like we heard and 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 did our due diligence in our part and didn't slide it to no one else.
Norma.
I I I I guess I would say that I still feel strongly that it is an open process. It's still transparent because there's a rubric that's laid out for the decision on if it has the metric of the appeal has merit. But I think that we did our due diligence when we made our funding decision, and I stand by that. And so that is where I think that this creates a lot of time work that we don't need to spend, and because I feel like it views our own decisions with scrutiny as if we don't I guess I stand by our decisions. I understand the need for the appeal process, and I think it's just the same thing to have Abby do it versus the subcommittee because I feel like it's still an open and transparent process. And anything that gets that had merit will still be brought to us, and we can have those decisions, and we'll look at it. But I think that it's very I hear you. I think that it was our decision when we made our original call, and so that's where I guess I feel comfortable delegating it at this point. But I hear you.
Sabrina.
Yeah, I just wanted to state that I myself also do stand by our decision making that we've done up to this point, but us as a council also didn't stop working after the applications were approved. I knew that there might be an appeal process, so I was kind of looking forward to doing that work. I also stand by the council in their decision making, but in my thought process, what's the difference between Abby doing the work with a couple council members to Abby doing the work by yourself with your team? The only thing difference is it's going to be in public meetings. So I don't really see, regardless if we just stand by our decisions or not, why we wouldn't want it to include council members.
Amy.
So this is about the appeals, right? And how did we do that last time? Who handled the appeals last time?
There was no denial and appeals process last time.
There was not. Okay. So then with that being said, right, I think we should have a subcommittee and with OHA involved, like you were involved in the rubrics and stuff, we were involved together, but I don't feel like we should just turn this over and put this on Abby's shoulders. I feel like as the accountability committee, we should have involvement in that process as well. Unless there's a conflict.
And there is a motion on the table that's been seconded, and so we're in discussion, and Dharma's hand is up.
I guess my concerns were too about the feasibility of hitting those timelines that we have in the rules still, if there was a drawn out conversation about it. And it's not that I think that like I'm worried about it, because if there was a big concern that popped up that would require that big of a conversation, it'd probably have merit and it would get discussed by the OAC. And so I think that the thought is that if we need to make the decision at the next OAC meeting per the rule, I think that it feels more feasible to limit the scope of that. But I understand if folks feel differently, I think I would like to just see what the vote is. But I think that it makes sense.
Deb.
Yeah, I think everybody's making amazing points. I just like to point out that, I mean, there's a lot about this process that wasn't our decision. When we first started this, we wanted to give organization opportunity to build and grow. And we went with extensions, so those places continue to do so. And it wasn't us that made the decision to open it up wide all over again. That didn't come from us to do that. Since the beginning, I mean, Measure 110, this OAC Council has been under attack because people diss their perspectives and not knowing the full range of what's going on behind the scenes. They're making, judgments on something they don't fully know about. And the fact that we're going to have to face those consequences, like, it's not fair. Like, I would like to make a motion that we add $1 billion to all these requests so we can fund everybody, because we're talking about what's fair. So like, we were tasked with this process where we had 1.3 roughly over $1 billion of ask for roughly $300 million worth of funds. All right. And so now we get to face that responsibility, and it's going to be our fault. There's going to be stories written about the OAC Council and what they did wrong, what they didn't do wrong. But at the end of the day, I mean, the people that made those decisions to change this process, they're not even here. Right now, they can sit back and they can judge what we have done with that. But we're faced with an impossible task. I mean, I think, man, it shows too. I mean, and also too, the funding's been attacked every single legislative cycle, right? And we see like this ask 1.3 billion, $1+ billion worth of asks for care in Oregon to help people who are struggling. And it just shows, it's funny that they're trying to take away that funding, yet we need more. We need so much more, as this process has shown. I think we have to deal with the realities of, because we're put in such an impossible situation. Like, yes, everybody deserves to be heard. Absolutely. And this process is heartbreaking. It's absolutely heartbreaking, because if it was up to us, we would fund every single agency, because it's needed. It's absolutely needed. And, whatever we do here is going to be criticized. All right. So if we open this up to a much bigger conversation, then we're going to be attacked for taking too long, and then we're going to come after the money again. They try to break up the council because we're taking too long in this process. And then on the other side, it's like, oh, they're not doing their due diligence. And so therefore they need to be, taken down. No matter what we do here, is a tremendously heartbreaking decision. I think we just have to, weigh, like, how important is it to get this process through so we can get these, decisions made and the funding out, versus, taking this time that we may not have. Now, I'm open to anything, but I just like to point those things out. And that's what I got. Sorry.
Morgan?
One of the biggest critiques that we experienced the first round was delays, and that haunted us for years. People talk delays. So my priority here is to balance everyone that is getting heard and staying on our timeline. And that's why I feel that delegating this will probably be best, because I'm that Gantt chart, what we would need to a subcommittee would need to meet 3 times a week, 2 hours a day for what, 3 or 4 weeks or so on the thing for the denial list. That's an incredible amount of hours to condense into a month after all of us have invested so much time and energy in this. And it's like, I just want to think like the cost benefit analysis, right? Because if OHA's decisions, because it is so binary, yes, no, would be identical to the subcommittees or near identical, I just don't see how that cost of us doing it ourselves is worth that level of time investment and sacrifice when the criteria are so, simple and almost administrative. So, I mean, while I'm amenable to other things, but if it's Abby and council members, then that is just a subcommittee. That's just a subcommittee with Abby. And then therefore it triggers the same issues with timeline that our previous subcommittee discussions did. So yeah, I don't, what is it, Abby, 4 weeks of denials?
Oh, we can pull up the spreadsheet again. I'm happy to answer more
Yeah, I
questions.
just want to do a little math here because for all those denials, and then it's 2 or 3 subcommittee meetings per week.
Yeah, and probably what I would want to do is to set 2 to 3 meetings a week just as holders, holds.
Yeah.
So as appeals or are submitted, that there's a way to just make sure there's a time to meet. And so this kind of pushes us out to, let me do some math here, the end of March. So a month?
Okay. So yeah, so far about 4 weeks of 2 or 3 subcommittee meetings a week on top of our OAC meetings, on top of our lives and jobs. And for what is my concern? And so that we make incredibly similar or identical decisions to OHA because the criteria are so binary. But if y'all want to take a different approach, let's just figure out who has, this many hours to dedicate and go from there.
I'll add a piece to the discussion and then Keisha is next. You'll see at the top there, additional OAC meetings needed, is that there will be additional OAC meetings required to ensure that we meet the timelines detailed in the Oregon Administrative Rules. So expect that just as a council on the whole. Okay. Thank you, Carly, for sharing that. Keisha and then Sabrina.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It just seems like every time we get to talking, it's a few different factors blended in to sway the conversation. First of all, denial letters going on does not mean that people will appeal. We might only get 1 or 2 people that appeal the process. We're talking about the appeals process. The denial letters are going out because we already voted on the denial letters. We're talking about appeals here. And it might not even be many appeals. So I don't understand where these numbers and all this crunch time is coming from. We're not even there. I just said we need to do as a council our due diligence to listen to these appeals, whether it's 1 or 2. And if it gets too overwhelming, we revisit it. But we don't even know if anybody's going to appeal by the criteria.
Sabrina.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to echo what Lakeisha just said, and then also I'm open to vote or move however the count for the vote on the table. But I just wanted to say on the top of the slide that you just showed, Abby, I couldn't see how many, was that 6 extra OAC meetings? And is that if all 95 people file an appeal?
Kathy put those onto the calendar just to make sure that if meetings are needed, that we have them on the books. Again, a lot of this, just like Keisha said, is unknown. We don't know if all 95 applicants are going to appeal or if one or none will appeal. So there's a lot unknown, but we definitely need to want to have a process decided upon so that we can get rolling and finish this process. Does that answer your question, Sabrina?
So that would be so however long it would take to go through 95 appeals, and we went through 36 large counties in a fairly relative amount of time when we were doing the applications, just to put it out there. So even though it seems very, very heavy, there are people that are willing to do the work. I just want to state that. But I also want to honor the council. If they're ready to vote, I'm ready to go as well.
Oh, we have 3 more colleagues with their hands up, or 2, Kathy. Dharma, go ahead.
I think it was just 2 things. That one, like those meetings have to occur in such an amount of time that we weren't constrained by in the first process. But I also want to point out that my decision to support the delegation also came with the understanding that there's quite a few people who have already indicated that they will be doing an appeal. When I asked in the tri-chair meeting if we were expecting a lot of appeals, I was told yes. And so that is why I support the delegation over, is because it's my understanding, and it's right, like, we haven't sent out, we don't know yet for sure, but we know from the empirics of the conversations that have been had between burn partners and folks who are denied, because they've been watching the videos, they've been watching these meetings, they're invested, they know, they've been watching it. There's a high indication and potential then in my mind that there's going to be a lot of appeals. We know how we know how heated this funding is, y'all. I just think it would behoove us to not expect a lot of appeals or too many appeals for us to handle.
Me.
So what I hear is just a lot of fear. I don't know, if I necessarily, go by fear. I took a commitment. I'm kind of nervous to say that because I feel, I'm expected, to sign up for the decision making. But I feel like also putting another lens on it can throw things off. So that's something to take in consideration too.
Kathy, did you have something you wanted to add?
I just wanted to reference what Sabrina said, that you could take that all on 95 appeals. That's if we send them all out at one time. Those, if there was even 50%, so 40 some appeals that would come in, if we sent all of those out, they would all have to be decided on at the next. That means you'd have to go through all of them. So we staggered it out so that we don't send an appeal out, until the next ones are already due in. So that's why they're staggered the way they are. So I just wanted to make you guys aware of that as they come in, they need to be presented at the next OAC meeting for a decision. I hope that made sense.
Okay. So where you're at is a long and hearty discussion. The motion remains on the table to delegate to OHA to me. That was seconded. So unless there is any other discussion, I think it's time for you to vote on that motion.
Okay. Ami, how do you vote?
No.
Amy? I will come back to her. It looks like she's away from her desk. Caroline?
No.
Dharma?
Yes.
Hubert? Here. Hunter?
I'm going to abstain.
Jackie? She's not in here. Josh? Keisha?
No.
Leticia?
Yes.
Melissa?
No.
Morgan?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yes.
Zeb?
Yes.
Sabrina, sorry, I skipped you.
It's okay. It's your first time. I forgive you. It's yes. I mean, no, I mean, it's a no.
Okay. It's not my first time, but Amy, are you back? We're voting on the motion.
Yes, I vote yes. Sorry.
And that motion passes with 6.
And Dharma asked in the chat, do we have quorums?
Let me double check, but
Sure.
yeah. And quorum is 10 now.
And while Carly is counting, Sabrina.
I just wanted to ask, so how many no's was that and how many yeses, and was that one abstention?
Yes, one moment. We do have quorum. Let me get back to we have 6 yeses, 5 no's, and 1 abstention.
Shannon, I saw you come off mute. Did you have anything?
No, I'm good.
Okay, all right. Okay, are we back to Leticia?
Okay, so our next agenda item will be OHA updates. So I'm going to pass it back over to Abby.
Thanks over to me. I am, when Carly, we were talking about what the OHA updates were for today, I can't really think of any. I know there will be some coming, and I'm glad we'll be meeting again next week, and we should the OAC will be meeting again next week. That's probably a good update to address what Leticia mentioned when we came out of executive session. And yeah, that the denial letters started going out earlier this week, and we'll continue to send them on that cadence you saw. And thank you to Kathy for putting that together. Dharma.
Maybe this is the upcoming filing time for us for the annual filing for the uh
SEI.
yeah, SEI filing is coming
Yes.
up. It's the only thing I can think of other than this.
Yes, I sent out an email with all of that information. Did everyone get it? Okay. And Hunter, if you're still around, I'm still trying to figure out why it says you can't submit a report. And I'll get back to you. But if y'all did not receive that, please let me know and I'll get it over to you.
Right.
Abby, with the delegated authority to review, will part of the process be kind of giving updates on appeals made and reviewed in the OAC?
I would absolutely like to do that. I do need to talk to Shannon and make sure I'm doing that legally appropriately and all of that business, but I think I will continue to prove my desire for transparency and ethical practices. So of course.
Thank you.
Thank you for asking. Next is Sabrina.
I was wondering, are they going to do the SCI filer training again?
I can send you some information. I believe that it's coming up. It was in all of that info, that email packet that I sent, but I can resend it to you.
Thank you, Carly.
Of course.
Jackie.
Hey, listen, I got kicked out. My internet went sideways, but so I'm back and I'm voting no. So hopefully it's not too late to vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Carly, we need to do some calculations.
Shannon, it's 6 to pass, but that leaves 6 yeses and 6 nos and 1 abstention.
Right. And I mean, I think the voting had closed, so I'm not sure. Perhaps someone wants to move to reconsider. I'm not sure what folks want to do.
I think everyone should get their vote. If it was she just disconnected, I stand by that.
Thank you.
So
I
it would
also
be
think that folks should vote if there's not a reason to abstain. That's not a conflict of interest.
So, Shannon, you don't know this, but I'm looking at you. Is this a moment where we need to do a revote to make sure all the voices are
perhaps we should run through the vote again, and I would remind sort of all OAC members that I believe right along with their appointment, there's sort of specific instructions about abstentions, and that right abstentions really should only happen if there's a conflict.
Okay. Ami?
No.
Amy?
I'm sorry, read me the motion one more time. Is this it right here? Move to delegate decision-making authority of appeals over to the director? That's it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yes.
Caroline?
No.
Dharma?
Yes.
Hubert? Hunter,
Yes.
Jackie, I saw you shake your head no. Is that correct? Okay. Have you marked down for no? Keisha,
No.
Leticia,
Yes.
Melissa,
No.
Morgan,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
Sabrina,
No.
and Zeb.
Yes.
And that passes with 7.
Back to Sabrina.
Yes, I just like how many no's and how many yeses.
And Carly, you're on mute.
I'm always on mute. 7 yeses, 6 no's.
Anything else for today before Leticia takes us out? Okay, Leticia.
Thank you, Abby. Thank you, everyone, for your time, thoughtful contributions, and engagement throughout today's meeting. We appreciate your ongoing dedication and look forward to our next meeting. With that, I'll officially close today's meeting. Thank you again and have a great day.